O conflito mundial virou a moralidade de cabeça para baixo e criou um momento único na história do comportamento sexual. O fim da era da doce inocência, a volta aos padrões rígidos de moralidade e a liberação dos anos 60 são os temas de Amor e Guerra, o terceiro programa da série O Século do Sexo. Houve uma época em que o casamento parecia ser uma lei natural, segundo a qual a virgindade antes do evento e a fidelidade para todo sempre eram a regra básica. Mas a guerra virou a moralidade de cabeça para baixo.
The whole world crumbling, we think it's time to fall in love.
Yeah, it's pretty bad timing.
Nos anos que se seguiram, o sexo encontrou formas de expressão repletas de uma nova energia e liberdade. O sexo permeava a cultura popular, ganhava música e criava seus próprios astros. O conflito havia libertado o gênio da garrafa e nem a paz nem a prosperidade conseguiam colocá-lo de volta nela. A Segunda Guerra Mundial mudou a vida de milhões de homens e mulheres de uma forma que ninguém esperava.
I think it released people's inhibitions. I mean, we literally didn't know, any of us, if tomorrow would ever come.
Era uma geração repentinamente liberada da camisa de força que o código moral da sociedade representava.
Kiss me. Kiss me for the last time.
A realidade era que aquela sempre poderia ser a última vez. Em um clima como esse, a visão das pessoas sobre a vida mudou profundamente. Mas a liberdade recém-descoberta veio sem um manual sobre como utilizá-la.
We were also innocent. We were issued with what's known as French letters. And I can remember being in a hotel in London that first weekend. And we would take a French letter and fill it full of water and lean out the window. You know, we were up 4 stories or so on, and see someone coming along and fling the French letter. Pew! You know, this is sweet innocence. We didn't even know what they were for.
Uma doce inocência que todos estavam loucos para perder assim que possível. Nesta guerra, as mulheres em casa na Grã-Bretanha enfrentavam bombas e balas como os homens. E estavam tão dispostas a aproveitar a vida enquanto podiam quanto eles.
I met one laddie Wolf. I suppose he was one of the big flubs of my life. And we went through a big affair. And we were staying at the Cavendish Hotel, which we always stayed at. I was always Captain Wolf's wife. And there was one time, and I don't know what happened or what he did, but I had my first real orgasm. And I screamed from my room down. He was terrible. He said, what happened? What happened? I said, having it again.
A Grã-Bretanha estava lotada de soldados que recebiam dinheiro demais, sexo demais e estavam perto demais. Era como os homens britânicos viam seus aliados norte-americanos. Mas para as mulheres britânicas eram misteriosas, atraentes e disponíveis.
And both of us were panting slightly, and I'm lying on my back, and she looks in my eyes and says, I can see the reflection of the sky in your eyes. And so, of course, I kissed her. We kissed some more, and we get really quite... And, you know, she captured my virginity, you see, which was just marvelous, absolutely fantastic.
De uma hora para outra, as britânicas tinham tanto parceiros quanto quisessem. Os britânicos estavam na frente de batalha, pensando se as garotas que deixaram para trás ainda mantinham a virtude, e seus temores eram reais como os estilhaços que voavam perto deles.
soldiers abroad, saying, is it true about the Yanks? Are they taking all our women? And I should say, no, they're still women. And it was unfortunate, it was so. It was the dollar of the silk stockings, wasn't it?
O medo do que suas esposas e namoradas poderiam estar fazendo atormentava os soldados britânicos. Os filmes da época refletiam essa ansiedade.
But I've got to get home, sir. It's near here. A few hours is all I want.
I'm sorry. Should have applied to your CO at Kent.
Just couldn't talk about it, sir.
You understand I have no option in the matter. Corporal Lewis, see this man on his train as far as Clapham Junction and make sure that he stays on it. Yes, sir. That's all.
No filme Waterloo Road, um soldado atormentado arrisca enfrentar a corte marcial para descobrir a verdade.
There you are.
You're cheap, Ted Purvis, that's what you are.
Hey. Cut it on, Judy, and wait downstairs.
Yeah.
Shapiro?
Yep.
Price?
Yeah.
Straczynski?
Yo.
McKay?
Yo.
Shapiro? Manfredi?
Os soldados americanos tinham as mesmas preocupações.
I believe it. I believe it.
You believe what?
My wife. She says, darling, you won't believe it, but I found the most adorable baby on our doorstep, and I've decided to keep it for our very own. Now, you won't believe it, but it's got exactly my eyes and nose. Why does she keep saying I don't believe it? I believe it. I believe it. I believe it.
Para o aparato militar, a nova realidade sexual era um problema mais sério do que o moral dos soldados. Doenças venéreas começaram a se espalhar de modo alarmante e um soldado infectado não podia entrar em combate.
The chief petty officer announced one morning that we were going along to the cinema. He said, you're going along to learn how to whip it in, whip it out and wipe it, he said. Which, in fact, was a venereal disease film. Rather awful because the screen was so big. And the sight of a penis in the latter stages of syphilis were not very encouraging for us 16 or 17-year-old lads. Looking up at this enormous screen would have no such as use for.
And that's to keep your 13 buttons buttoned.
Where I come from, if you don't use it, it's supposed to wilt away.
If you don't use it, you'll just have a wet dream, that's all. Ain't nature wonderful? The next best preventative is a rubber. Hell, a rubber's like taking a shower with a raincoat on.
Foi necessário haver uma guerra para que se criasse o primeiro programa de educação em massa sobre o sexo seguro. Nos filmes de treinamento do exército, os jovens soldados ouviam com grande interesse. Na realidade, a maioria deles não ligava para o sexo seguro, assim como suas parceiras.
I knew nothing about contraception. None of us told anything about contraception. We'd heard about... We thought men knew everything. They talked about these ghastly French letters, they used to call them, or Johnnies. And I can't feel you, darling, if I read one of these things. Oh, that's all right, I used to say. It's much nicer without. And enjoyed myself, and I enjoyed my sex. I don't mind admitting it. It was lovely.
Quando a morte é uma realidade diária, qualquer preço pago por um momento de paixão parece valer a pena. Mas isso fez com que vários jovens amantes crescessem depressa.
I was quite a shy fella, really. Daphne was the only girl that I'd ever had, really. And it was a friend of hers who told me Daphne was pregnant. I was rather shocked, but it didn't worry me unduly, not really. I knew she was only 16. I suppose I was rather pleased about it.
I never thought for 1 minute to get married. I never thought of that at all. I just had to tell Mum. And her first reaction was, oh well, you know what's got to happen. Go away and have the baby taken. And of course Bill dearly wanted to marry me. So that is the reason we really got married, was for our baby's sake. And I've never regretted it.
I did get pregnant quite a bit. I mean, horrid. About 6 times, I think, in all. Now, most of these, because, well, there was no money, or he'd gone off abroad somewhere, were backstreet abortions, and they were really very frightening. And I'm afraid a lot of us got pregnant because we didn't know any different. There were no such things as caps or anything, pills. So we suffered. Well, those that played temptress, or those who wanted naughty girls.
Viva hoje, pois amanhã poderemos morrer. Era uma visão reforçada pela lembrança aérea diária.
At this particular moment, there's dum 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 dum. A buzz bomb was throbbing right over her head. So I pushed her against the wall, and there we were, very tight together. Boom! And it lands just, I don't know, a block away. So I said, look, shouldn't we be doing something? She says, it's my night off. And besides, you've been fighting a war. And so she, I stayed there for 3 days. It was marvelous. Bless her and bless her husband for being absent from the place.
Na frente de batalha não havia esse tipo de regalia. Aqui as únicas mulheres que a maioria dos soldados encontrava estavam pintadas nos bombardeiros ou eram inventadas com a ajuda de alguma pin-up distante.
Ride on your own guitar, look around town, look around town. Sing no matter where you are.
It ain't fair, Harry. I'm telling you, it ain't fair. My Betty, she married an orchestra leader.
So what? There's other women.
Quando tudo mais falhava, a imaginação e a engenhosidade podiam superar as circunstâncias mais difíceis.
I really didn't learn much from the Navy, not about the Navy. After a time, I learned how to wank in a hammock. It's very difficult to do that without waking the entire mess deck because we're slung from parallel bars, you see, and if you're too vigorous, all the other hammocks start swaying about. You have to tense yourself against the bars with feet and head, really. Couldn't manage it now, I don't think, but there we are.
Tanto para muitos homens quanto para muitas mulheres, era uma época de novidades. Quando os canhões finalmente silenciaram na Europa, os que haviam lutado e vivido os anos difíceis estavam tomados por uma nova sensação de liberdade e liberalidade. A guerra havia desencadeado paixões que nos anos seguintes a sociedade lutaria para conter. A influência da televisão e do cinema na moralidade do pós-guerra é o que você vai ver daqui a pouco. E mais, o mito Marilyn Monroe e o lançamento da revista que chocou os conservadores. Amor e Guerra volta depois do intervalo. Que se despediram anos antes viraram veteranos acostumados com perigo e morte. As meninas que eles deixaram para trás também haviam mudado. Tinham uma nova independência que nascera da necessidade de viver sem os homens. Enquanto se abraçavam, muitos guardavam segredos que achavam mais prudente não contar. Para alguns, a vida nunca voltaria ao normal. Eles haviam vivido experiências que não podiam ser ignoradas ou encobertas.
The ones I felt sorry for were the married women who got pregnant. And you can understand why. Their husbands were abroad, prisoner of war, dead. They never knew when they were coming back, missing, whatever have you. But I know of cases where people have come back and found their wives with young children and accepted them.
Outros voltaram para casa e encontraram a mulher apaixonada pelo homem errado. O filme britânico Desencanto mostrava uma mulher casada que não conseguia se esquecer do romance do tempo de guerra.
Shan't be long over this, darling, then we'll go up to bed. You look a bit tired, you know.
Don't, Harry, I'm perfectly happy.
Celia Johnson sente ser impossível desistir de seus momentos românticos secretos com Trevor Howard.
It's a big picture now. Here we go. No more laughter. Prepare for tears.
A mensagem era que a moralidade libertina da época da guerra só poderia levar à dor em tempos de paz.
Oh, Alex.
So very much. I love you with all my heart and soul.
I want to die. If only I could die.
Homens e mulheres lutavam para esquecer os anos de conflito. Os homens retomavam os antigos empregos. As mulheres voltaram a ser esposas e mães. As noivas vestiram branco mais uma vez. Parecia que a família feliz estava de volta e a explosão populacional veio provar isso. Até a realeza fez seu papel na interpretação da volta à vida normal.
Symbolize the homely virtues which are the strengths of British life. This new prince, whose name and generation is linked with the destiny of a great race, came as a reminder of the new hopes based on the old faith, with which this nation bravely faces 1949.
Mas para a maioria dos britânicos ainda era uma época de carestia. A comida e o vestuário ainda eram racionados. Os jovens tinham de buscar emoções onde podiam.
So it didn't seem very cheerful, and we did what we could in life, and that's with drink and with sex and with jazz. Jazz was the great music of youth at that time. It was the air we breathed.
Depois da guerra, George Mailey ganhou a vida tocando jazz. Ele deixou a marinha e sua rede bem para trás.
We discovered all over England, and particularly in London, we got to know all these wonderful girls who were called scrubbers. But the scrubbers were warm-hearted girls who really liked sleeping with jazz men. Just as later on the groupies liked sleeping with rock people, I suppose. And I remain friends with some of them to this day. Elderly ladies now, mostly rather respectable, but not against the odd memory of times in digs where the landlady would say, you know, you married? Oh, yes, of course. And no, I wouldn't have lost those days, not for the world.
Mas fora dos clubes de jazz, o código que regia o namoro voltara aos padrões rígidos de antes da guerra.
And life was much more formal than it is these days. There were rules and regulations. Young ladies didn't sleep with a boyfriend unless he promised to marry her. And often, before they would, do the business, you had to propose. You had to put a ring on the finger. And our feeling was, as young men growing up there, that if you want to get your leg over, you'll have to give her a ring. And if you didn't, inevitably, she'd fall pregnant. And if she fell pregnant, you were married. No messing, not like today. You were married in a matter of 3 or 4 weeks. Otherwise, her dad would be round with her brothers. You'd be in big trouble. So there was never any argument about it.
Ao contrário da Grã-Bretanha, os Estados Unidos do pós-guerra eram uma terra de abundância. Entretanto, mesmo uma cozinha cheia de eletrodomésticos ainda era uma cozinha. As mulheres acharam que haviam conquistado uma nova liberdade durante a guerra, mas a sociedade ainda não estava preparada para isso.
It was thought if you were single and 25, 29, didn't have a husband, you should go to Grand Canyon and throw yourself in. You were a complete, total failure. And if you were having sex and you weren't married, forget Grand Canyon, just go to the kitchen and put your head in the oven and turn on the gas.
A regra social dos anos 50 ditava que o sexo só podia ser praticado no casamento, e a televisão reforçava essa ideia. Os telespectadores assistiam à visão de mentirinha da vida familiar como ela deveria ser, honesta, alegre e assexuada.
Dressed? You mean dressed up?
Carla, you wouldn't understand half pint.
Oh, yeah?
What the heck is going on here?
Tabus foram reforçados. No programa de Lucy Ball, até a palavra grávida foi censurada. Mas os anúncios nos intervalos contavam uma história bem diferente. O sexo parecia estar se derramando na tela da TV.
Drives wives wicked. Every bar of new Lifebuoy Mint Refresher contains the essence of 125 mint leaves. Soap has never smelled this good before, and neither have you. New Lifebuoy Mint Refresher.
You get a lot to like with us. Só que aquilo que podia entrar apenas pela porta dos fundos da TV era a personagem central nos cinemas.
I hate you too, Johnny. I hate you so much. I think I'm going to die from it.
O sex appeal vendia ingressos, mas mesmo no cinema as mulheres que o exibiam eram vistas como caçadoras perigosas.
Now they all know that the mighty Johnny Barrow got taken and that he married us.
There's something extreme there. Number one, the sense of threat that women posed professionally and competitively, and number two, that what had these women been doing while the men had been at war? There was a kind of paranoia about treachery, on the romantic or erotic treachery. So that's what these women represented, I think, and the men, the insecurity of men returning from war.
Put the blame on me, boy. Put the blame on me. One night she started to shim and shake. That brought on.
They are powerful women, and it's a sort of projection of male fear, of male guilt of one kind or another.
Hollywood encontrou uma estrela que podia acalmar essa insegurança, sendo tão sedutora quanto vulnerável. Por mais de uma década, Marilyn Monroe reinou como a deusa do sexo favorita do mundo todo.
I just love finding new places to wear diamonds. Mr. Esmond and I are going to be
Apesar de os homens saberem que ela era inatingível, eles adoravam o fato dela fingir que não era.
You don't even know there's a certain kind of girl would take advantage of a situation of this sort. May I kiss your hand?
I always say a kiss on the hand feels very good, but a diamond tiara lasts forever.
I would say a lot of it did have to do with fantasy. A man would look at a picture of Marilyn and figure that that's what he wanted. She was just the quintessential marshmallow, yummy, delicious, non-confrontational female that he wanted in his life. She was everybody's fantasy girl, including the greatest baseball player of our time, perhaps, Joe DiMaggio. He could have had anybody he wanted. He wanted Marilyn. She was the quintessential girlfriend, wife, lover for him. Same thing with Arthur Miller, who is a reigning intellectual that doesn't get much more brainy than him. Not a bit like Joe DiMaggio. He wanted her as his beloved wife also. They were just men, that's all, after all. When it's all said and done, a baseball player and a playwright. But Marilyn represented everything sexual to them, as she did to everybody else, masculine.
A magia de Marilyn Monroe fora descoberta por Hollywood, mas funcionava tão bem fora das telas quanto nelas.
Well, that's where she was really happy, when she went before the guys in Korea, because she could feel their response to her. I mean, she is in the moment then. And she knew, I mean, she enjoyed her power over men. There's something so unreal about her. I mean, she's such a kind of almost cartoon image of sexuality, of innocent sexuality, of something sort of impossible, because she's all promise, and it's a promise that can never be fulfilled. It's too unreal.
No auge da fama, Monroe ajudou a desafiar a visão predominante dos anos 50 sobre o sexo. Não o fez com apresentações nem com filmes, mas com uma indiscrição do passado, que agora ressurgia em uma nova revista masculina. A Playboy tinha os direitos de uma foto nua de Monroe, tirada antes de sua carreira deslanchar. Tendo Marilyn na página central, as vendas superaram em muito o esperado.
I got the rights to reproduce the already famous Marilyn Monroe calendar photo that nobody'd seen. What I tried to do with Playboy and with the centerfold was simply say sex is okay. It's a natural part of being alive. And the message in the centerfold, quite frankly, was good girls like sex too. And that, of course, is very, very revolutionary.
Prior to Hugh Hefner, sex in print, sex as entertainment in print, was a dirty picture business. It was a mail order business. I mean, the people who did it were pornographers. The ads for stuff were in the backs of men's magazines. And, you know, you sent off your dough and you got the stuff in a brown paper bag.
Hugh Hefner tirara o sexo do submundo e dera a ele um lugar respeitável nas bancas de jornais e revistas. Mas não faltaram vozes gritando em desaprovação.
You don't think that there's anything that is morally destructive in anything that is in Playboy magazine? Well, your pictures of nude women in suggestive and provocative poses, out-and-out dirty jokes. You don't think that this is at all a bad influence on a 10 to 16-year-old young man or young woman?
I don't think you'll find what I would consider to be dirty jokes in the magazine.
Oh, sir. I'll give I'll give you a book chapter and verse, but I wouldn't dare.
You have a problem here.
Yes. I think that's hedging a good deal.
Let me make a distinction because I don't want to hedge and I don't want to avoid the reservation. I can only say that in my own case, without any reservation at all, I would have no reservation having the book around with children of my own of any age.
Playboy was the first one that made, quite frankly, sanitized sex, but it wasn't sanitized sex to us because it was, wow, look at this. You know, there are women that take their clothes off. This is incredible. How can I get more of this?
Tendo começado com $5.000, Hugh Hefner construiu um império baseado no sexo.
Hugh Hefner had this vision of, you know, I can present sex and put it on the coffee table in every home in America. That was a huge gamble, but he was right.
Hefner havia transformado o sexo em um item de consumo, como pasta de dentes e lustramóveis. O segredo estava no marketing.
He was showing them a fantasy world that they probably didn't have in their own lives, but this is what it could be like if you met up with a Playboy bunny at the Playboy Mansion.
Mas seria preciso mais do que uma fantasia da Playboy para mudar a rígida moralidade da época. Seria necessária uma revolução alimentada por uma mistura de juventude, dinheiro e música.
For the first time it was realized that the teenage market was commercially valid, so it began to be catered for.
They had time on their hands and money in their pocket, and that made all the difference. In this culture, that's what makes the difference.
This is us, see? We're today. If you don't dig us, shoot away some square joint to the rest of the creep. Well, why not stick around and get with it?
Uma aristocrata britânica, Lady Lewisham, que se tornaria madrasta da princesa Diana, achava a cultura adolescente adorável.
Lady Lewisham, what do you think about our teenagers?
I think they're splendid. And I'm delighted you've asked me that question, because I sometimes think they get rather a raw deal.
Well, why?
I've met very many teenagers up and down the country when I've been travelling around, and I've been always particularly struck by their enthusiasm about everything, by their new ideas. I like the idea that they want to wear gay clothes.
Os adolescentes tinham mais dinheiro do que nunca, mas os pais ainda tentavam controlar a vida amorosa deles.
Hello, Frank. Listen, the family says no, but I'll sneak out tomorrow night and meet you anyway. Okay? Swell. See you tomorrow night.
In the 1950s, the Barnard College was an all-girls school.
And you had strict curfews on the ground floor of Brooks Hall, which was the main dorm. There were little alcoves, you know, called dating parlors, where you could entertain your dates. Sometimes there was discreet necking going on there. None of those girls could ever bring a man upstairs.
Nos anos 50, o sexo voltou a ser um tabu. O estigma da mãe solteira assombrava os lares e as relações sexuais fora do casamento eram consideradas transgressões. O documentário Amor e Guerra volta daqui a pouco.
Carol, I think we'd better go. Before what?
What are my stockings doing here?
Oh, are these your stockings?
What did he say about me?
The fear had to do with what your parents would say or do if they found out. It had to do with what would he think if you caved in and had sex. You wouldn't be considered a nice girl anymore.
You want to go home? All right. All right, you little teaser. You're going home. I'm not female, so I don't know what it means to hang on to your virginity. I know one thing. As a male, I wanted to get rid of mine in the absolute worst way.
The end of a perfect evening. But how do you say goodnight?
Don't, please.
Or it could go this way.
Well, so long.
Just like that. One more way.
I had loads of fun.
So did I.
Good night, Eddie.
Night, Ann.
You knew people were doing it, but you weren't sure what they were doing, and you weren't sure, even in your neighborhood, among your own friends, you know, as they were doing it. You know, guys would say, you start wondering if you were the only guy in the group that was still a virgin.
Sex education was mostly done by your mother and father or by somebody who was initiating you into the sexual rites. You talked to your girlfriends if you were a girl, but they didn't know any more than you did, so you discussed sex very quietly with each other. There were no official ways to learn about sex. Even doctors, young women didn't have gynecologists then, but your own family doctor, you didn't talk about sex. Nobody knew anything to tell anybody else except your peers and the person with whom you might be having a sexual friendship. That's how you learned. You learned by doing it.
Thanks for a wonderful evening. Russ. Boy, it must have been some movie. Russ, this isn't right.
Look, I'll tell you something. All the time I was dating Carol, I was falling for you. If you let me explain, I can tell you. Yes, it's true about Elaine, but that was before we had...
Carol's gone. I think she ran away.
Sex is something nobody even talks about in the 50s hardly. You know, I don't know how, the only thing I found out about sex, some of them girls would tell me. But nobody talks about it. You know, I don't know what the deal was, but it's just you kind of found out. You know, you started hearing stories about that 4th grade and start wondering, and then some of the girls will start showing you.
Em alguns estados americanos, o sexo fora do casamento era uma transgressão e os médicos podiam ser processados se dessem conselhos sobre controle de natalidade.
But it was not uncommon to carry a condom in your pocket, having no idea. You had it in your wallet with a big mark, you know, in your wallet you carried for 5 years. I remember my father catching me with one, and he said, "What's that?" And I really wasn't sure what it was. I just know I wasn't supposed to have it. I had no idea how to use it or what it was about or anything like that at all.
That check they gave you. It's as if they were buying my child.
Well, if you keep your baby, what have you really got to offer him? Betty, I asked you to get upstairs.
They're taking my
Betty,
face.
we're just trying to make it easier for you.
They're taking my face. Let me go. Let me go.
In the 1950s, the worst fate that could befall a girl, what every parent's nightmare was, that their daughter would have sex and become pregnant. And if you had sex, there was a very high possibility that this would happen, particularly if you were relying on condoms and other methods. In fact, sex was a little bit like Russian roulette. And people did get pregnant and had an extremely hard time. They wanted to have an abortion, finding a doctor who would do it.
Her life was over if she got pregnant. Her life, essentially was over. She wouldn't finish high school. She wouldn't... it was over. Where guys are expected to be studs.
Dois pesos e duas medidas ou não, as pesquisas mostravam que um grande número de jovens, homens e mulheres, tinham sexo antes do casamento.
The guy who had the car had the best chance of having sex. A car gave a teenager freedom, gave him the ability to move around, gave him the ability to invite people into his lair, i.e. the good girl or bad girl, preferably the bad girl, I guess, if you could get her. And all of a sudden, you're welcome into my convent. Turn on the radio.
O mundo adulto perdeu o controle de vez quando um novo som pulsante deu início a uma revolução adolescente.
There was a period there when the churches actually got behind it, saying that it was bad music for the devil. It's making the kids do weird things.
You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. Too much of love drives a man insane. You broke my will, but what a thrill.
The whole thing about rock and roll within that period of time was you were doing something you weren't supposed to be doing.
Músicos como Ronnie Hawkins estavam no centro da nova moda chamada rock and roll. Como os músicos de jazz do passado, eles tinham benefícios irresistíveis.
What I would tell a musician when he started with me, son, you ain't gonna make much money playing these bars with me, but you're gonna get more pussy than Frank Sinatra.
40 days. I'm gonna say she'll be back home in 40 days.
I don't know what it was. I know that every town you played, you had the little girls hitting on you, and boy, they'd never done that ever before. But and we weren't Elvis Presley, and we weren't all those big-time acts, the Beatles or Rolling Stones. But the Rolling Stones or the Beatles couldn't have gotten any more women because it would be physically impossible to handle more than my band did. I can tell you that.
Well, that's all right, Mama. That's all right.
Mas foi o jovem Elvis Presley quem acendeu a chama. Sua aparição em 1956 causou uma revolução na cultura popular.
He is a wild man on stage, and he was doing gyrations, swiveling his hips, that could be seen as stimulating a sexual act. There's no question about it.
Walking through a party in the county jail. The prison band was there, they began to wail. The band was jumping and the drum began to
Elvis had a little hump in his, little jerk below the waist, like it might be a sexual intent. I bet it was every now and then.
Elvis was it. He was it for probably 3 years. His impact is just unparalleled. But his impact in terms of sort of pushing the sexual agenda is unparalleled as well, too.
Apesar da nova liberdade, o sexo ainda era comentado aos cochichos. Os jornais o descreviam como um refinamento muito particular.
Some papers, like the Daily Express, you weren't allowed to mention sex, pregnancy, things like that. Pregnancy was called confinement. People did have sex. They had intimacy. They were intimate. News of the World all said, and then they were intimate. And we all know that intimacy meant that they'd had sex. They never actually said they did it.
Mas nem todos eram tão delicados assim. A imprensa marrom ficava feliz em lucrar com o fascínio das pessoas pela vida particular dos famosos. Uma das publicações, a revista Confidential, chegou a se aventurar em um território que ninguém ousava pisar.
It said on the cover, Tab Hunter is a... And then you turn the page, cat lover. And then he has this tabby cat at home. He spends all his time petting this cat. It isn't masculine to like cats. Only fairies like cats. You see how they twisted it? Because he had a cat, he was suddenly maybe a pansy.
De todos os tabus envolvendo sexo, a homossexualidade era o mais proibido. Liberati processou a revista Confidential quando ela insinuou que ele fosse gay.
I am going to file a $25 million libel suit against Confidential magazine.
I'm yours tonight, my darling, possess me.
And then the wooing got frantic.
Quando começaram a circular boatos sobre Rock Hudson, Hollywood fez de tudo para proteger a imagem de seu ídolo das matinês e sedutor dos corações femininos. Um casamento bastante comentado na mídia foi arranjado para silenciar os boatos.
Getting out of that bed or am I coming in after you?
He wouldn't dare.
Na Grã-Bretanha, atos homossexuais eram escandalosos e ilegais. Mesmo assim, foi um filme britânico, Meu Passado Me Condena, que tratou com maturidade do amor que não ousava se confessar.
And why is he afraid? Why do some people help him, some people turn away in disgust?
Why can't he stick with his own thought? You can come home Frank Jeffries when you've got rid of him.
They brought everyone down and said, now we're making this very serious film, nobody's ever done this before in history, although the word is never used in that script. But no one will refer to these people as pansies, as puffs, as Nancy's, faggots.
You were attracted to that boy as a man would be to a girl.
Laura, don't go on. For God's sake, stop now.
I can't stop. I love you too much to stop. I thought you loved me. If you do, what did you feel for him? I have a right to know.
All right, you want to know. I shall tell you. You won't be content until you know, will you? Till you ripped it out of me. I stopped seeing him because I wanted him. Do you understand? Because I wanted him!
But I had much more mail than I ever got. And it was simply saying thank you. And women wrote and said, well, now we know what was wrong with their son, their husband, whatever it might have been. People have been living in shadows for years and didn't know what this cataclysmic thing had happened to their marriages or their boyfriends or even their girlfriends.
O filme chocou o público, mas nem se comparava com o escândalo que estava prestes a abalar as estruturas da sociedade britânica. A promiscuidade sexual podia ser tolerada na zona do meretrício, onde strippers divertiam os homens nas boates e prostitutas completavam o serviço do lado de fora. Mas quando os negócios das ruas atingiam os altos escalões da sociedade, tornavam-se explosivos.
The first really big sex scandal, and the biggest in all history probably, was the Profumo scandal. There was not a single element in that story that doesn't add to perhaps the most extraordinary affair of the century when it comes to political scandal and dirty deeds in high places.
Já era um choque grande o bastante o fato de John Profumo, ministro da Guerra, ter sido flagrado na cama com uma prostituta cara chamada Christian Killer. Muito pior era o fato de ela também andar se deitando com um adido militar soviético.
And when we heard about that in Fleet Street outbound, we couldn't believe it. Are you serious? Are you telling me that this bloke Profumo, that he is sharing a bed with the Soviet naval attaché? Well, all together? No, separate. So once you hear a little tidbit like that, you can't stop, can you? You've got to break the story.
Are you going to make any comment at all?
No comment.
O sexo havia entrado em choque com a política e produzido o maior escândalo desde a guerra. Profumo foi forçado a pedir demissão.
Every editor's dream, especially in the tabloid world, is to find a cabinet minister in bed with a whore. That's the story we chase. We think they're at it all the time. They deny it. They lead us. They tell us what we should do, how we should behave, what's decent, what's right, what's proper. But we know that behind our backs, little, would you believe that they're up to all kinds of hanky-panky.
O escândalo Profumo chocou a sociedade britânica. A visão das altas esferas em relação ao sexo havia sido exposta. Não seria a última vez que o sexo e a política entrariam em conflito. E o maior escândalo de todos continuaria a ser segredo por muitos anos.
Mr. President, the late Marilyn Monroe.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
I can now retire from politics after having had Happy Birthday sung to me in such a sweet, wholesome way.
Desde a guerra, a sociedade vinha tentando colocar o gênio sexual de volta na garrafa e não estava obtendo sucesso. A rebeldia adolescente e a poderosa comunicação de massa começavam a expor o sexo. Logo, nem mesmo os presidentes conseguiriam mais esconder seus casos. A crescente revolta não podia ser mais debelada. Quando o exército cortou o cabelo de Elvis, houve uma invasão de cabeludos britânicos. E as mulheres que suspiravam a cada apresentação deles logo estariam armadas com uma nova defesa, a pílula anticoncepcional. Chegara o momento perfeito para a revolução sexual. O próximo documentário da série O Século do Sexo vai mostrar a geração que acreditou viver num tempo em que o amor livre era possível, sem inibições, neuroses, infelicidades ou ciúmes. Não perca a revolução sexual.